The wine glasses sparkled, the candles flickered, and I stood in my dream apartment, waiting. The food was still warm, the lights perfectly set, but the door never opened. This is the story of how my family didn't just miss my housewarming, they underestimated me and paid the price. If you've ever felt invisible to the people who should love you most, hit that like button, subscribe, and get ready. Because today's story isn't just about family betrayal, it's about turning that pain into one of the sweetest, most satisfying moments of justice you'll ever hear. My name is Opal, and I can tell you the exact decibel of a doorbell that never rings. It's the sound of your own breath breaking in your chest while the candles burn lower, the pasta thickens in its dish, and the city outside your window sparkles like it's mocking you. 10 seconds in, the only footsteps you hear are your own, crossing the hardwood, checking your phone, checking the hallway, checking the clock, checking your pride. And when the minute hand finally slices through your hope, you discover something harsher than silence, being forgotten on a night you built to be unforgettable. I didn't stumble into this apartment. I clawed my way here with coupons, extra shifts, and a spreadsheet so color-coded it looked like confetti. The first time I stood in the empty unit, concrete floors, sun slicing clean across bare walls, I pressed my palm to the glass and imagined laughter bouncing off it, the scent of garlic and rosemary curling through the air, my mother saying, "You did it, Opal." I pictured my father's slow nod, the one he saves for news anchors and medical breakthroughs. I pictured my brother Chase cracking a joke and my sister Lydia stealing the biggest slice of cheesecake and pretending not to. The day I closed, I bought one expensive thing, 6 champagne flutes with vertical cuts that caught light like falling diamonds. I set them along the counter the way some people arrange trophies. Then I set a date, Saturday, 7 p.m. housewarming. Family only. Come hungry. Come proud. The week before, I lived inside a list. Fairy lights. Done. Fresh eucalyptus for the vases. Done. White plates from the thrift shop scrubbed until they glowed. Done. It felt like braiding my own hair in the dark. The motions were muscle memory, but the result was gorgeous and somehow still a surprise. Every task I finished stitched a little more dignity into the night. I played music while I cooked, brassy, joyful, a little defiant. I rolled out the lemon bars and dusted them with powdered sugar that floated through the air like first snow. I browned butter for the pasta until the kitchen smelled nutty and warm, like the inside of a bakery at dawn. My family chat buzzed, not with excitement, but with logistics. "Mom, we'll see about timing, your dad's got a golf thing." "Dad, traffic's bad on Saturdays." "Parking downtown is a nightmare." "Chase, can I bring Kiana? She's keto." "Do you have keto?" "Lydia, what's the dress code?" "I don't want to overdress your place." I typed, deleted, retyped. "We're whatever you want. I'll make salmon and chicken. There'll be salad and roasted veggies. Come as you are." The day of, I woke before my alarm, pulse already at a canter. The apartment felt like a held breath. I tied back my hair and moved like choreography. Salmon and lemon and dill, chicken with garlic and paprika, tomatoes blistering in the cast iron like tiny suns. I turned on the fairy lights. I laid out a small stack of napkins folded like envelopes. I set the dining table and then set it again, just because I could, the click of plates against what has always sounded like possibility to me. At 6:49, I changed into a deep green dress and clipped on earrings that chimed when I moved. I put the cheesecake on the counter and slid the knife beside it, the blade shining like a promise. At 6:57, I texted the family chat, "I'm so excited to see you all. Take the elevator to 14. The door will be open." At 7:02, I lit the candles. At 7:07, I checked the hall, clean as a page, no footsteps, no voices from the elevator vestibule. I smoothed the front of my dress. My phone stayed face up on the counter, screen waking every few seconds as if to say, "Nothing. Still nothing. Still nothing." By 7:18, my chest felt tight, like I was wearing a dress 2 sizes too small. I put on music, soft, non-committal, the kind of playlist that doesn't force a mood, and poured a little sparkling water into one of the champagne flutes to test the look. It fizzed and climbed and looked like celebration even without alcohol. I lifted it, then set it down. It's strange, the rituals we try to perform for an audience of none. At 7:23, the first message pinged. Lydia, I'm tired. Work was a nightmare. Rain check? The message dressed itself in a little heart emoji like a bow on a brick. 7 minutes later, Chase. We're stuck across town. Kiana's blood sugar is weird. Might skip. 8:01 arrived and my phone buzzed with a 3-word summary of my childhood. We're busy tonight. Mom this time. No punctuation, like kindness had been rationed and they were running low. I stood in the kitchen, fingers pressed to the cool counter, and listened to the apartment talk to me. The hum of the fridge, the distant traffic, the fairy lights whispering against the window when the air handler clicked on. The salmon, perfectly pink, waited patiently in its pan, as if the night could still be saved if I just plated it beautifully enough. There is a special kind of humiliation in realizing you've prepared for joy and received indifference. It isn't sharp at first. It's slow, it seeps. It recolors the memories you were trying to paint over. Suddenly you are back at a middle school auditorium, searching for your parents in a sea of faces while clutching a participation ribbon that trembles like a leaf. Suddenly you are 19, calling home about a scholarship and hearing your mother say, "That's nice, honey. Did you hear about how well Chase is doing?" I tried to be reasonable. I tried to say, everyone's busy. Things come up. I'm an adult. I can eat an expensive dinner alone. I plated the salmon anyway. I poured the wine I bought for Dad, dry, minerally, his favorite. I took one bite and tasted nothing. The second bite was salt. Not from the fish, from me. So I did something I'm not proud of. I took pictures. The table. The candles. The plates. My stupid, beautiful flutes lined up like 6 forgiving friends. I sent them to the family chat with a single message. I saved you seats. The little delivered check marks appeared like tiny tombstones. No one responded. I blew out the candles one by one, and each tiny spiral of smoke felt like a thought I'd been nursing for years finally darkening into truth. I packed the food into containers. I put plastic wrap over the cheesecake and wrote tomorrow on it like a label the fridge would understand. I turned off the music. The apartment settled around me. Still mine, still gorgeous, but a little colder now, like it had watched me learn something and was too polite to comment. I washed the dishes that had never been used. Soap suds gathered, iridescent, catching my kitchen lights and breaking them into colors. It looked like celebration had found a way to exist anyway, its fragments clinging to my hands. A stupid part of me wanted to laugh at the absurdity, at the cinematic cruelty of it. Another part of me felt very, very old. People like to say you teach people how to treat you. I used to hate that line. It made cruelty sound like a class I'd elected to take. But standing at my sink with my party cooling in the fridge, I wondered if I had been too good a student in the curriculum of swallowing and smiling. I wondered how many times I'd turned hurt into a joke, into it's fine, into don't worry about me, and handed it back to them wrapped in a bow. The city outside didn't care. It glittered anyway. 13th Street neon, a taxi horn, a couple laughing too loudly 2 floors down. I dried my hands and walked to the balcony. The air was crisp, and the railing was cool beneath my palms. Across the way, someone's TV flickered blue. Far below, a delivery rider balanced 2 pizzas in one hand and a future tip in the other. Life went on. Of course it did. My phone buzzed again, and I told myself not to look. I looked anyway. It was Instagram this time, Lydia's story. A boomerang of her clinking espresso martinis with 2 girlfriends at a hotel bar 20 blocks north. Caption, self-care night. Needed this so bad. The camera cut to a mirror selfie. She looked glossy and perfect and nothing like tired. I felt something shift, not a snap, not a violent break. More like a lock turning inside a door I hadn't realized was closed. The sound it made was quiet but decisive. It sounded like my name said by me, to me. Opal. Enough. I slid the glass door shut, and the click was clean as a vow. I didn't rage text. I didn't call. I didn't craft speeches in my head and rehearse them to the lemon bars. I poured the last of the sparkling water into one of the flutes and lifted it to my lips. It tasted like nothing and everything, like water, yes, but also like the first mouthful you take after crying, when your throat feels raw and you know the body will keep going because that's what bodies do. I set the flute down and opened my laptop. A blank document glowed back at me, a pale square inside the dark. My fingers hovered, then began to move, not over a script for an apology I'd never receive, but over a plan. Not a petty one. Not a tantrum in a cocktail dress. Something precise. Something that would let me stop asking to be seen and build a life that couldn't be ignored. But first, I let myself feel it, the small funeral of a night that never got to live. I sat on the floor in my green dress, back against the couch, and allowed the ache to travel the whole length of me. When it finished, it left behind a strange, steady quiet, the kind you get after a storm when the world smells rinsed and new. That was the last night I ever set a table hoping someone would show me who I was. The next time my family came through that door, if they ever did, it wouldn't be to teach me my worth. It would be to learn theirs. The Monday after my housewarming that never was, I woke up with swollen eyes and a resolve I hadn't tasted before. I dressed for work like armor, black blazer, hair slicked back, lipstick the color of brick, and told myself, if they don't see me at home, fine. They'll see me in the world I built without them. But family doesn't let go so easily, even when they're the ones holding you at arm's length. It started small. Mom called on Wednesday, not to apologize, not to mention the pictures I'd sent, but to ask if I could lend her money for a charity gala ticket. It's good for networking, she said breezily. And, you know, it'll make your father proud if I show up in style. I almost laughed. My father, the man who had once told me, "Don't get too attached to fancy things, Opal. You'll only disappoint yourself." Proud? Of me funding my mother's appearance at a ballroom where my name wouldn't even pass her lips? "Sorry, Mom," I said, voice clipped. "My money went into my apartment. The one you skipped celebrating." Silence. Then a forced chuckle. "Still holding on to that, honey? You really need to learn to let things go." I hung up before my teeth cracked from grinding. A week later, Lydia's text arrived. Long, flowery, full of emojis. "Opal, babe, so exciting. We're engaged. Party popper ring, can you believe it? We're planning the party and your place would be perfect. The view, the space, the vibe. Everyone will love it. Can we book it?" Book it. Like I was an Airbnb. Like she hadn't ghosted me on the night I lit candles for her. I stared at the message, my pulse pounding in my ears. Anger flared hot, but under it was something sharper, clarity. Lydia didn't see me as family. She saw me as useful. And I realized that was the role I'd been playing for all of them. Useful, dependable, invisible. That night, I sat on my balcony, legs tucked under me, city lights flickering below. The air smelled faintly of rain, cool against my skin. I thought about the countless dinners I'd attended where my achievements were an afterthought. The times Chase's career wins were toasted while mine were brushed aside. The birthdays forgotten until a week later. The way Dad always introduced me as our practical daughter while Lydia was our princess and Chase was our star. I'd swallowed it for years because I believed love was buried somewhere under their neglect. But now, I tasted the truth, bitter, metallic, undeniable. They would never see me unless I forced them to. The cracks widened quickly. Chase came next. He called me out of the blue, his voice casual but edged. "Opal, hey. So listen, Kiana and I are hosting a client dinner next month, but our place is too small. Yours would be great. We'll cater everything, promise. You won't have to lift a finger." "Funny," I said, letting my voice linger on the word. "That's exactly what you told me before you skipped my housewarming." He chuckled like I was making a joke. "Come on, don't be petty. This is business. It's important. You'll actually be helping me out in a big way." There it was again. Useful. The role they'd written for me in invisible ink. "No," I said. Flat, final. He paused, thrown. "No? What do you mean, no?" "I mean exactly what I said, Chase. My apartment isn't your event space. If you want to impress your clients, rent a hotel." The silence stretched, sharp as broken glass. Then he muttered, "Wow. Lydia was right. You've gotten weird lately." Weird. Because I'd stopped laying myself down like a welcome mat. I hung up without another word. But the universe has a way of testing new boundaries. 2 weeks later, Lydia called again. This time her voice syrupy sweet. Opal, I get it, you were hurt. I should have come to your housewarming. I'm sorry, okay? But the engagement party is different. It's big. It's special. It's family. You can't seriously say no. Her words wrapped themselves in apology, but underneath was the same entitlement. She wasn't sorry for missing my night. She was sorry her needs didn't automatically outweigh my dignity anymore. I listened quiet while she spun her pitch. Then slowly I said, yes, you can use my apartment. Her squeal of delight rang through the phone like breaking glass. Opal, I knew you'd come through. You're the best. But even as she chattered about menus and guest lists, my mind wasn't on her words. It was on the plan forming inside me, precise and steady. If they wanted my apartment, they could have it. But this time, the spotlight would be mine. The days leading up to Lydia's party were a performance, and I played my role well. I nodded when Mom suggested floral arrangements, smiled when Dad offered to chip in for wine, as though that erased his absence months earlier, and even took Chase's smug directions about table placement. Inside, though, I burned. Every fairy light I strung was a reminder of the ones I'd lit for myself. Every polished glass was a reflection of the empty flutes I'd once lined up in vain. And with each detail, my resolve hardened. This wasn't going to be Lydia's night. Not really. It was going to be mine. The evening of the engagement party, my apartment glowed brighter than it ever had. Candles flickered. Jazz hummed through the speakers. Guests poured in, family, friends, distant relatives who hadn't spoken to me in years but suddenly found my space charming. My mother kissed cheeks. My father shook hands. Chase clapped people on the back like a politician. And Lydia, stood in the center of it all, radiant in her silver dress, sipping champagne like it was liquid validation. They laughed. They toasted. They basked. None of them knew that under the polish, the night belonged to me. And when the time came, when Lydia clinked her glass and prepared to announce her engagement, I stepped forward, heart steady, smile sharp. Before we toast, I said, my voice carrying across the room, there's something I need to say. The clink of Lydia's glass hung in the air like a bell announcing judgment. She raised her arm, teeth flashing in a perfect smile, ready to revel in applause. But my voice cut through the hum of conversation before hers could. Before we toast, I said evenly, there's something I need to say. Heads turned. The room quieted, curiosity rippling like wind through tall grass. Lydia froze mid-gesture, her champagne flute trembling ever so slightly. I stepped forward, not hurried, not hesitant. My heels clicked against the hardwood, each sound measured, deliberate. For once in my life, all eyes were on me, and I wasn't going to shrink. I want to thank everyone for being here tonight, I began, smiling just enough to keep them listening. This apartment has been a dream of mine for years. I worked, I saved, I sacrificed. And when I finally moved in, I wanted nothing more than to celebrate with the people who matter most. My family. A ripple of recognition stirred. Some faces softened. Others stiffened. Lydia's smile thinned. I invited you all, I continued, voice steady, to a housewarming party 3 months ago. I set this very table. I cooked with the same hands that cooked tonight. I lit these lights, opened my door, and waited. I let the words hang there, stretching the silence like a taut string. A few guests shifted in their seats. My father's jaw flexed. Chase looked down into his glass. And not one of you came. The air sucked out of the room. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. Just a shared, stunned quiet that settled heavy on every pair of shoulders. I gestured lightly to the candles, the polished glasses, the soft music. Everything you see tonight, I had prepared for you then. The only difference is that back then, I ate alone. Someone coughed. A cousin, maybe, uncomfortable with the tension. My mother pressed her lips together like she could hold back the truth with sheer force of will. I smiled, not bitterly, but with a kind of calm I hadn't known I possessed. So here's my toast. To family, who taught me that respect isn't given automatically. To love, which isn't proven by blood, but by showing up. And to myself, for finally understanding both. I raised my glass. My hand didn't tremble. My voice didn't crack. I sipped, then set it down, the sound crisp in the silence. Gasps and murmurs swelled like a tide. Lydia's face flushed crimson beneath her flawless makeup. She forced out a laugh, brittle as glass. "Oh, Opal, you're being dramatic. Everyone's busy. You know how life is." "No, Lydia," I interrupted, my voice cutting sharper than hers. "Life is busy, yes. But respect? That's a choice. And you all chose not to be here for me. Yet tonight, you crowd my apartment for your celebration. Funny, isn't it?" Her fiancé shifted beside her, eyes darting between us like he'd walked into a minefield. Chase muttered something under his breath. Not the time, but he didn't meet my gaze. I straightened, letting the weight of my words sink into the room. Enjoy tonight. Celebrate. But after this evening, my doors are closed. To all of you. Permanently. The final word cracked like a gavel. The silence that followed was different this time. Thicker, heavier. No one dared to laugh it off. No one could. I turned, walking toward the balcony, my back to their shocked faces. My pulse should have been racing, but it wasn't. It was steady, like I'd just stepped into the skin I was meant to wear all along. Behind me, I heard the whispers start. Small, frantic, embarrassed. Lydia hissing at Mom. Dad's voice low, gruff, defensive. The scrape of a chair. But I didn't turn around. Not once. On the balcony, the night air greeted me, cool and clean, the city below glittering as if it knew exactly what had just unfolded inside. For the first time in years, I wasn't the one waiting at the window for approval. I was the one holding the view. And my family? They could sit in the silence I left behind. The balcony door slid shut behind me, sealing the room in its own awkward silence. The city stretched out below, alive and indifferent, while my apartment behind me churned with whispers. For once, I didn't feel the need to manage anyone's comfort. I let them stew. Through the glass, I saw my mother lean toward Lydia, her hand clutching her wine glass so tight I thought it might shatter. Chase was shaking his head, clearly annoyed, not at himself, but at me for daring to disturb their perfect little script. Dad stood stiff and silent, shoulders square, his gaze locked on the floor like he could will it to swallow him whole. Guests began to fidget. I could hear it in the shuffle of heels, the clearing of throats. A cousin slipped her phone out, pretending to check the time. An uncle muttered something about an early morning. Slowly, politely, they began to leave. My beautiful apartment, the one I'd begged my family to see months ago, was emptying itself of people who didn't deserve to be there in the first place. I stayed on the balcony, watching each departure through the reflection in the glass. The way people avoided my eyes, the way Lydia's smile grew tighter with every guest who slipped out, it was better than any apology they could have given me. This wasn't just discomfort. It was exposure. My family's neglect wasn't my secret anymore. Everyone had seen it. Eventually, the only ones left were the four of them. My parents, Chase, and Lydia with her pale-faced fiancé. The laughter was gone. The sparkle of champagne meant nothing now. Finally, the balcony door slid open. My father's voice, low and strained, reached me. "Opal, you didn't have to humiliate us like that." I turned, meeting his eyes for the first time all evening. Didn't I? Because 3 months ago, I was the only one humiliated. Alone in this very apartment while every single one of you found something better to do. He had no answer. His jaw clenched, but the words never came. My mother sighed dramatically, placing her glass down as if she were exhausted by my antics. "You're making too much of this. We're family. Family forgives. Family shows up," I shot back. "Forgiveness comes after effort. You never made any." Lydia stomped forward, silver dress shimmering, eyes flashing. "God, Opal, you always have to make everything about you. Can't you let me have one night?" I laughed softly, the sound surprising even me. "One night? Lydia, you've had every night. Every birthday, every dinner, every conversation revolved around you or Chase. This is the first time I've asked to be seen. And when you didn't show up, you taught me everything I needed to know." Her fiancé touched her arm gently, urging her to let it go, but she shook him off. Chase muttered, "Unbelievable," and walked toward the door without another glance back. My parents followed in silence, their pride too bruised to speak further. Lydia lingered, glaring at me like I'd stolen something from her. Then, without another word, she stormed out too. The click of the door behind them echoed in my chest, not like loss, but like release. I walked back into my living room, candles flickering low, glasses half full and abandoned. It should have felt hollow, but instead it felt lighter. This space was mine again. Sacred, unstained by their entitlement. I poured myself the last of the champagne, raised the glass, and whispered into the empty room. To me. And for the first time, the toast landed exactly where it should. The morning after, my apartment felt different. The fairy lights still hung across the balcony, but their glow was softer, calmer, as if even they knew the storm had passed. I walked barefoot across the floor, the faint scent of last night's candles lingering in the air, and I realized I wasn't replaying the party in shame, the way I had after my failed housewarming. I was replaying it in peace. For the first time in my life, I hadn't bent. I hadn't shrunk. I had spoken my truth out loud, not hidden it in the corners of my heart. And the silence that followed wasn't empty, it was freedom. I thought about my family's faces, the cracks in their practice masks, my father's downcast eyes, my mother's forced sigh, Chase's muttering retreat, Lydia's fury at not being the center of the universe. None of it hurt the way I expected. Instead, it confirmed something I'd always suspected but never admitted. I didn't need their validation. I never had. Because in the end, family isn't the people who share your blood. It's the people who show up when you need them. It's the friend who brings wine to celebrate your first paycheck. The coworker who remembers your birthday without Facebook. The neighbor who waters your plants when you're away. Respect, loyalty, love. Those are earned, not inherited. And mine? They hadn't earned me. So I decided something that morning, sipping coffee at my kitchen counter while the city stretched awake outside my window. I wasn't going to chase them anymore. No more empty invitations. No more begging for scraps of attention. The next chapter of my life would be written without their pen hovering over my shoulder. I looked around at the apartment, my apartment, and smiled. This wasn't just four walls and a roof. It was proof. Proof that I could build something beautiful on my own. Proof that I didn't need them to clap for me in order to keep climbing. I raised my mug in a quiet toast, this time not to an empty room but to myself. To Opal, I whispered. To the girl who stopped waiting at the window. To the woman who finally learned she was enough. And for the first time, I believed it.